This is Algebra 1, Semester 2. This is the second unit, 2 variable data, and the fifth lesson in that unit called Linear Data Regression and Slope Practice. This is from creatormath.com. This is under the Algebra tab, and follow the table of contents to find the second unit and the fifth lesson. Copy the following problems into your composition book on the correct pages according to the table of contents with the notes for those pages from creatormath.com. Actually, for this one in your comp book, it's some of these same images in the notes. You do not have to repeat images if you've already got them in there from the notes. Just keep that in mind. Otherwise, you'll be putting a lot of the same graphics in. So just to give you a heads up, this is statistics, but it's light. It's statistics light, very light. And the goal of this statistics for me inside of Algebra 1 is to prep students for when they take more elaborate statistics either in other math classes or a full-on statistics course. So this one deals with, I'm just going to read this, given the following, what is the most likely correct line of regression? So there's an idea in statistics that we use graphs like this. We have data points, and you can see some points here, and I could draw a lot more points in here, right? Let's say there's a lot. What happens is the data points start to form some sort of pattern, and we have this thing called a line of regression. The line of regression is the line that most appropriately fits the data. So notice this line B. Look at these bigger dots, right? These are data points. Notice how many of them are sort of in and around this B, right? And you've got a couple up high, you've got a couple down low, but really this line here, this line B, is approximating the given data in this graph. So we're going to go line B is what they're looking for. And so the line of regression is a line that represents the bulk of the data. And that's the difficult thing about data. We collect data, and then the question becomes, how do you interpret this? This line helps you take all of the diverse points or data points and put them into sort of a single progression and look at the slope of the line to see where the data might be headed. We can extrapolate that, hey, if the virus keeps spreading, right, or whatever, we're headed out this way. Unfortunately, viruses are not a straight line, but they'd be a different kind of distribution, and we'll show you that in a bit. All right. So let's go to problem 2. Given the following, what does letter E represent? So letter E, they're just asking about the different parts of the graph. This one, I bet they're saying the x-axis. Okay, the x-axis it represents, right? And they might have said study time represented by the x-axis, but I see where they're headed now. Probably they're going to ask us, what does F represent? What does F represent? So, like I said, statistics light. This is the y-axis, right? So we graph on a Cartesian coordinate plane, and we start to borrow for that for a lot of subjects. In stats, it's not necessarily a Cartesian coordinate plane, but it's still got the x-axis and the horizontal, representing the horizontal dimension, and the y-axis representing the vertical dimension. Horizontal being left to right, vertical being up and down. Given the following, what does G represent? So where's G? G has got to be the title. Yep, title of the graph. Wow, I told you this was light, so this one should be an easy set of questions to answer. Every, data graphs need a title, and if you leave it off, you see how important it becomes, right? Data set of study time versus grades this is. The idea being, as my study time increases, my grades increase, and this line represents this idea of this data. We learn a lot by that title. By reading that title, it starts to explain all kinds of things about that data in that graph. Given the following, if B is the best fit line to the data, what would we expect the correlation coefficient of B to be in comparison to the correlation coefficient of A, C, and D? So this line is the best fit line. Best fit meaning it's embedded in the data in a way that balances all the data into a single line. This one here, nope, too high. It's not representing all these data points. This one too low. It's not representing all these data points. This one crazy, right? Wrong direction. D. So there's this idea that the correlation coefficient, the closer it gets to 1, the more perfect this line represents that data, right? So we want a correlation coefficient equal to 1, and that's probably as technical as we're going to get. We would use a calculator and our data points or a spreadsheet to generate these points and these numbers, except for even the most any number of data points more than a few, and it starts to become more likely we're going to use a spreadsheet to process that data. Given the following, what is the most likely correct line of regression? So now notice the data. Is the data headed up this way for D? Nope, it's headed down this way. Well, how about C? Now that looks off, right? And this is made obvious for you to see, hey, this line right here, line B, best fits or represents that data. So this is going to be line B. That's your best fit line, or the line of regression that's fitting the data in the best manner. Given the following, what does letter E represent? Letter E is, okay, going for x-axis again? Oh man, this is easy. Okay, so x-axis, and I might have gone with what this is. I might have gone with the title of the x-axis, Age of Men, right? So in this case, oh, I love this graph. Look at this graph. Data set of the age of men versus the remaining hair on their head. Okay, so as their age increases, the amount of hair decreases, right? So notice the data going down. As the data goes out to the right in terms of age, the amount of hair lessens. How funny. All right. Well, that's what data shows us, right? The truth hurts, but it will set us free. Given the following, what does letter F represent? Okay, y-axis. All right. And again, I would go with maybe the title here too. Could be an alternate answer. Given the following, what does G represent? G is the title. Good. And I love that. You saw how much I learned just by reading the title. And I said data set of the age of men versus the remaining hair on their head. That explains a lot to me, right? I start to get it. Now, if it's a subject I know about, right, then I'm starting even clearer. But that title is very, very important. And if you've ever studied journals, you'll start to notice that, man, those titles, sometimes you wish they were more complete to explain what that data really is. So given the following, if B is the best fit line of the data, what would we expect the correlation coefficient to be in comparison? So these are repeat questions in the same context, this one being a negatively correlated line, right? The older you get, the less hair you got. The other one was the more you studied, the higher grades you got. That would be a positively correlated line. This one says, yes, correlation coefficient, the better our line fits the data, the closer to 1 we get. This is from the statistics or statistics light of Algebra 1 class, semester 2. And this is from the 5th lesson dealing with sort of the concept of linear data regression. Linear data regression and a line of regression and a correlation coefficient. All right, find it on creatormath.com under the Algebra tab, down under the table of contents.